Shall
we dance?
Yes. All right, we are, it's the 26th of Av, right? Tafshin Ayin Tet. And we are learning Shmuel Aleph, the 12th chapter, the first verse. 12th chapter. Chapter 12.
Next month is one of those rare months
where yes, exactly. Well, yeah. It's 1 to 1. Exactly. Yeah. One last line. Yeah, just one line. Verse 1. And this is a very monumental moment. It's Shmuel's official farewell. He is going to hang around for another 5 chapters or 6 chapters with us, but he's getting ready, age-wise, to retire.
No, she took the whole book of Dvorim.
So yes, so
what's going to happen in Shmuel Bet?
Shmuel Bet is mostly about David, right? David and
Why did they go with
But
David?
who wrote that?
who wrote that? Natan Navi and another Navi. So it's so he's. We are at a point in history where we have a king, and we have one win. The king has Shaul won one battle, the first battle, and Shmuel afterwards gathered everybody and said, "Okay, let's now that we have a king, and the first inauguration of that king didn't go as well. Not everybody respected him properly. They were very quick to request a king, but when they were given one, they were not all lining up behind him. So he said, "Let's now reestablish the kingdom, reestablish the king, and." Let's celebrate, and that's where we ended up. He gathered all the people in the Gilgal, and they thanked God with the sacrifices, with shlamim, and they were all were celebrating the win that Shaul saved them from. There was just to recap what happened. There was a king called Nachash Ammoni. He came to a city and says, I'm going to poke one of your eyes, old man. I'm going to make you blind in one eye." He wanted to humiliate them in front of all the Jews. And they asked him for 7 days so they can go tell all the Jews so they will know what's coming. So the humiliation will be completed. In the meantime, they went and they were asking for help, and Shaul was inspired and helped them and smite those Ammonites, and and everybody saw that he has the power of God and the power of victory behind him, and that's what led to this re-inauguration. So now Shmuel used that opportunity of having everybody in the same place, and everybody is uplifted and happy and understanding that we have a king. Where the equation changed in the government, and now we all have to rally behind the king. We used to have a judge that was leading the nation for almost 400 years, and for 410 years. And now it's time to move to a different form of government. So Shmuel, to begin with, was not happy with this form of government, and wasn't happy with this form of government right now. He claimed that the Jews had to wait just a little longer. He didn't tell them how long, but we know after the fact that it was about 3 years. They had to just wait a little longer, and then God would select the king. And that is the right approach, because all of the leaders of the Jewish people were selected by God. Moshe Rabbeinu was selected by God. Shmuel was selected by God, and he will go through all of them and explain how the whole idea of requesting a king and basically creating a form of government by the people. The people were requesting it, is not for us, is not the right form of government, because if we're selecting someone, we can select the wrong someone, we can select someone and then, that person will be out of favor. It's not permanent, it's not right, it's more of a phantom or an illusion that this is the right way of doing it. Yeah.
Shmuel was who chose Shaul.
Yes, Shmuel didn't like it to begin with, but God told him, "Listen, let it be. Now that we are in the land of Israel, and now that we are basically going more and more, dealing more and more with nature, with the world. We're not living in a miraculous environment like in the desert. When we were 40 years in the desert, it was all miraculous. Our clothes grew with us. The manna came from heaven. Water was traveling with us. I mean, it was not natural way of living. It was a wonderland type of an environment. And the idea is not to live in a wonderland. The idea is to live with the world and deal with the world. So if we deal with the world, and the Jews ended up cornering them, arriving at the idea that they need a king, let them have it, said God to Shmuel. So Shmuel let us do it, but now his farewell includes the very stern warning of how to treat this form of government and how to understand our obligations. The obligations didn't change. What we had to do before we had a king is the same as what we have to do after we had a king, and it does not alleviate us from the our duty to act to be dedicated to God. And that is the main message from this whole chapter. Now he's going in steps, and let's just start and see how he does it. He built his rebuke in a very smart way, so it will be accepted. So people will be open and receptive to it. Because when you come to someone, especially when they're very happy, and you sort of pour cold water on their faces and say, you know what, you did something wrong, and you're about to lose everything, and they don't like it. Nobody likes it. Nobody likes to be rebuked, and very easily it can go off the rails, and they can start responding in a very improper way to Shmuel and start blaming him. So in order to prevent that, he starts as follows. V'yomer Shmuel kol Israel. So Shmuel starts counting what he provided to them. I listened to you. Shamati bekolchem. You asked for lekol asher amartem li v'amlich alechem melech. I listened to everything that you said, and I provided I anointed a king, selected a king, or helped you select a king, and set up this new form of government. But the but will come in a second. And now the king is walking in front of you. Walking in front of you meaning leading you. He's leading you into battle. The king led them just now into a battle, and the battle was very successful. V'ani zakanti v'savti uvanai hinam itchem. And I am old right now, and I'm not just old, I'm also run down. I'm tired. I'm burned out, so to speak. V'savti is someone who's more than just aged. He's aged, but he's acting his age. Now, Shmuel was 51 and a half or so, 51. What?
He's a kid.
Yes, he was, but because of the circumstances that he needed to, he anointed a king, he put together Shaul as the leader of the Jews, and now very shortly thereafter Shaul's time will come to leave, and God didn't want him to see his doing being undone, so he sort of helped him age faster. He was born, by the way, Shmuel was born weak. He was a frail child. That's why his mother didn't bring him right away to Eli, to Bet HaMikdash, as she promised. She wanted him to nurse and to grow and to be stronger, so she brought him in when he was 2 years old. Anyway, so he's tired, and he's recounting the whole story with his children. He's starting to hint to them that, the form of government that we had until now, which was the shuftim, the judges, was the right form of government for you, because the judges were used throughout the years to steer you in the right direction, not to do the work for you. The leader is not someone who's supposed to replace the will of the people. The will of the people, they have to do the right thing, each and every one of them individually. But when they go a little bit off the path, the judge was used to sort of, it's like bumpers in a, in a bowling lane, just to get the ball back in the middle. So that's what the judges were used to steer the people. But the ball has to run on its own, A king, on the other hand, is shaping the will of the people against their will many times. You're going to do this way, or else you're going to be hung, off the doorpost. So it's a different form of government, which is not really meant to be yet, because the ultimate king will be the king Mashiach, the one that will lead us to the ultimate redemption, and that the Jews at that time were worthy of that kind of a king. Just a little longer, like 3 years longer, and they would have gotten King David in such a shape, in such a way that he would lead them to the ultimate redemption. But they couldn't wait any longer. They didn't know. They couldn't read the future, and they started pushing too early, which caused a lot of problems and ultimately, a lot of delay in the coming of Mashiach, which we're still waiting for. So, what he meant to tell them now is that, the whole system of judges was good, and my children, even though they were not perfect at the time when you were starting to ask for a king a few months ago, they corrected their ways, and they could have been billed as judges. They could have continued for a little longer. And they're still with you, and they're still people of stature. And I was servicing you for all my life, since birth. He was 2 years old when he was brought to the Bet HaMikdash. All of my life, I'm with you, and I'm working for you, and I dedicated my life and my children's life, and because they were judges as well, they were running a court in Beersheba. I'm dedicated to you. I gave everything that all my time and energy to you all this time. And why is he telling them that? We will see in a second. So ineni anubi. So now I want to ask you a question. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to ask you a question. And I want to ask you a question in front of God and in front of his Mashiach, of his the chosen one, in front of Shmuel. I want Shaul, in front of Shaul. I want them both to be my witnesses. May God be my witness, and I want you, the people of Israel, to give the testimony, and you'll testify, and there are witnesses, and nobody can change their mind afterwards. Did I exploit you in any way, shape, or form? Did I take money? Did I act improperly? Did I do anything wrong? Do I need to change something? Did I borrow a quarter from someone? I'll pay you back, right now. Let's settle all of that. Why did he say that? So that once you start rebuking them, they cannot come and tell them, start claiming, you did this and you did that, and who the heck are you, and you took our money. So he goes in a very smart way and tells them, which ox did I take? Did I take anyone's ox? Because I'm as a public servant, I didn't. He was rich. He has his own means of living because his father Elkanah was a wealthy man, so he didn't need it. But all of the other public servants, they need support of the community, right? So, did I take anyone's ox? Did I take any vehicle or any animal that will help me do work? No. And when I was traveling from place to place, he was going, making the rounds, and every year he would come home once a year. The whole year would be on the road, with carrying his own donkey and his own food and his own tent and his own everything to sustain himself while he was traveling around. And he didn't. There was no company car there. He didn't take the company donkey to get from place to place, although he is entitled to, because he's not going to those locations for himself. He went to
business trip.
It's a business trip, exactly. I mean, what's a quarter of a mile? Nothing. And then he's going into the way he was doing the actual work. Did he misjudge anybody? Did I misjudge anyone? I didn't misjudge anyone. All of the court cases that came in front of me, just name one that was not that I was wrong. Et mi ratzoti, and did I hurt anyone? Did I hurt anyone with, not necessarily physically, but did I hurt anyone with my judgment? His judgments were all just and all perfect, and both sides, when they came out of the court case in front of Shmuel, they were all feeling good about it. The one that was wrong was found wrong, and he understood that he was wrong. Nobody felt that they were misjudged or taken advantage or got hurt by it. And I didn't take any money, not in a form of service, and definitely not in a form of money. And I didn't even take money for my students, because he had in the Gemara many times they're talking about Shmuel and Bet Dino. Shmuel was not traveling alone; he had an entourage. He had a whole court clerk, and a couple of judges if need be, and a messenger for based in messengers. You have to get to call the witness, not the plaintiff, the defendants. You have to retrieve them, stenographs, whatever. He had an entourage working with him, and he paid for all of that. He didn't ask for any money for any of them. So now is the time, ladies and gentlemen. If I did something wrong, if you think that someone got hurt, if I misjudge someone, speak now, and I will fix it. I will pay for my own money. I will pay to fix it. Vayomru, so everybody with total agreement says, Lo shaktanu. No, you didn't. You always judged us right. V'lo ratzotanu, and you didn't hurt us in any way, shape, or form. V'lo lakachta miyad ish mi'uma, and you didn't take from anyone anything. Vayomer alehem. So that's what he was seeking. Vayomer ed Hashem bachem ve'ed meshicho. Hayom hazeh ki lo metzatem biyadi me'uma vayomer ed. So he says, he repeats it and says, do we have a testimony here from God and from the chosen one, Saul, that today that you didn't find anything wrong with my deeds in the past? Vayomer ed. And so both of them, Saul said, yes, I'm testifying true. And also there was a bat call. It's a heavenly sound came, heavenly voice came from sounding from out of nowhere, and God is agreeing, yes, everything that you did was perfect. So now that he have this letter of recommendation from all of the Jews that he is okay, now let me tell you what I really think about you. Shmuel I. So now he's recounting all of the history, highlights of the history, of how God provided for the Jews everything that they needed, even if they didn't deserve it. And how always was it God who selected the leader and who selected the chosen one of the generation to lead the Jews. And he's starting all the way from the most important ones and counting down to the less important ones. So, ויאמר שמואל אל העם, השם אשר עשה את משה ואת אהרון ואשר העלה את אבותיכם מארץ מצרים. So, So he's saying that until now the system was that God is choosing the person, and just like God chose Moshe, who was our first leader, and Aaron, and he's the one that took us out of Mitzrayim, even though we didn't deserve it, even though we weren't necessarily ready. He's not mentioning here that we did things wrong in Mitzrayim, because that was before Matan Torah. So before Matan Torah, they can't really, God couldn't really blame us for anything. But nonetheless, we should remember the good that God provided to us. Sort of free, uncalled for. Just ואשר אלי את אבותיכם מארץ מצרים, ועתה התייצבו וישפטה אתכם. So now, God, just like God created Moshe and Aaron at the time, and now I am the judge, so stand up, and I am going to judge you in front of God. There are several occasions in the history of the Jews where God has a claim and the Jews have a claim, and now we have a court case. Who's right? We need to judge, right? So now that he was deemed the perfect judge, he was deemed the one that is always just, and always the two sides always agree with the outcome. So now let's judge you versus what God wanted. Let's see, you had claims and God had claims, and let's see who's right. And what are we going to judge here? We're going to judge here what we said before, the fact that you requested the king. The Jews were asking for a king. Now, what is the other side? What is God asking? So, God is asking, וישפטה אתכם לפני השם את כל צדקות השם אשר עשה אתכם ועם אבותיכם. Let's judge what God provided you with, all of the charitable actions, or the charitable work that God did to the Jewish people, all of since inception of Judaism, when Abram, he's recounting here actually just highlight. He doesn't go all the way to Abram. He is going to the time of Jacob. When Jacob went down to Egypt, that's when we had a nation, when we had 12 tribes. All along, God provided us with freebies. We didn't deserve it. Now, what is he trying to tell them? He's trying to tell them that you were also able to get the freebie now, had you just asked for it or acted ready to receive it. Because the truth is that they were scared. They were scared because this king Nachash Amoni, he was looming. He was scaring them and threatening them. Very similar to what happened almost every day of the Jewish history, including today. The Iranians are threatening us, and so we didn't turn at the time to God as we should have. We turned to a king, and we thought, hey, the king is going to help us, and he did help us. You have to remember that it's not him that really did it. It's all part of the charitable action that God embedded allowed him to do. So God is asking back, how come you don't respond? You're getting all these charitable. I was now in Israel, and people tell me that, you know what, we live here on miracles. Everything is a miracle. From morning to evening, everything that we do, business, everything is miracle. Security, the way the nations are acting towards, it's all miracles. You can explain it, you can understand it, you can justify it. It's all a miracle. So if this is the way we live with miracles, why now you decided that miracle is not good? We need a king. So he goes back to and recounting a very short summary of a few sentences, all of the history of the Jewish people. Kasher ba Yaakov Mitzrayim. So when Jacob went down to Egypt, he went down to Egypt on his own. God did not send him there. Joseph called to tell him, I'm here, come see me. Then so God agreed with it. But the decision was a human decision. So he came down to Egypt. So then Egypt became a place which is not that comfortable. Then our ancestors asked God to get us out. Vayishlach Hashem et Moshe ve'et Aaron. So now he's starting to recount the leaders that he sent to us to help us, starting with Moshe and Aaron. ויוציאו את אבותיכם ממצרים וישיבים במקום הזה. So he sent Moshe and Aaron, who led the Jews out of Egypt and settled us in the land of Israel. Question? Moshe and Aaron settled us in the land of Israel? Who did that?
Neither is Joshua.
Joshua, exactly. So why is Yoshua not mentioned here? Yoshua is not mentioned here because Yoshua is considered an extension of Moshe. He was so lockstep with Moshe.
Moshe set it all up.
Moshe set it all up. Moshe started it. He was totally, he was living with Moshe in the same tent and under him as a very dedicated student and very dedicated extension of Moshe Rabbeinu. So when Moshe sent him on his way, the Gemara is mentioning that Moshe is considered our son, and Yoshua is considered the moon. And the moon has, only the reflection of the sun to work with. It doesn't have anything of its own. That was the status of Joshua. He was the extension of Moshe. So everything that he did is considered, to the credit of Moshe Rabbeinu. So he's not mentioning him here, and therefore Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that is being credited with bringing us to the land and settling us here. The big wars happened before with Sichon and Og on the other side of the Jordan. There were a few wars in the land of Israel, but they were smaller at the time of Joshua. I mean, the biggest war was when they walked around Jericho 7 times, and blew the shofar, and they didn't crack a sweat, even though it's a sweaty area, very hot area. וישכחו את השם אלוהיהם וימכור אותם ביד סיסרא. So now, after he mentioned all of the good, now he's mentioning, and now on the other hand, what you did was completely wrong. There are 2 steps. There are 2 steps in when someone doesn't listen to God. First of all, they just stop doing things. It's comfortable not to, but they don't forget about God. The next step is forgetting about God. We'll see in the next sentence that the Jews felt that we didn't forget about him, we just sort of didn't do everything right, but it's not that we forgot. But the truth is that they did forget. And that's what, and when Shmuel is recounting the facts, he's not sugarcoating it. You forgot about God. And then, what did God do? He started giving you hints in a form of smacks. And he's recounting those punishments or those warning signals from the most severe to the easier one. The most severe was Sisra. Okay? Sisra, this is the time when Dvorah was the judge, right? And he came from the north and he tried to destroy us. And why was it so difficult? Because he took land. He grabbed land from us, number one. Number two, he had the most sophisticated weapon systems at the time. He had chariots. He had iron when we were dealing with wooden pitchforks, and so that was the most severe threat. And Sisra Sar Tzva Chatzor, he was the general of Yavin, who was the king of Chatzor. And then the next event in the past 400 years was the next severe, the least, not the least severe, but the next severe one was Biat Plishtim, the Philistines. The Philistines were really bothering us for a long, long time, and they also grabbed land. And finally, the last one who grabbed land, but less, he took only one city. That was at the time of the second judge, the time of Ehud. Uviyad Melech Moav, when he grabbed just the city of Jericho. This Irat Marim, it used to call then. So he grabbed that, he took over that city. So those 3 events, Sisra and Philistines and Moab, those were our enemies who actually didn't just terrorize us, they grabbed land. Vailachamu bam, and they fought those generations who forgot about God. So what happened in those generations? Vaizakur Hashem. So they right away knew who to turn to, and they asked God for help. And that cry for help came with repentance. So they knew what to do. They knew where were they wrong, and when they felt that they are losing the war, that some terrible events are coming, terrible enemies are coming, they repented. And they said, Ki azavnu et Hashem. This is where they said, yeah, we left you. We weren't perfect. They didn't say that we forgot, because they didn't want to admit all the way, but they at least admitted, half of the problem. ונעבוד את הבעלים ואת ההשטרות. And we worshipped the idols. Now this here we have to take very, very, very strong note. And that is that Shmuel does not mention any other sin. There was no problem of unity. There was no problem of Avat Israel. There was no problem between man and God in other respects other than the idols. The Jews were at a very, very high level of observance. We, when the first Bet HaMikdash, the first temple was destroyed, it was because of three very strong sins. A lot of murderers and idols and promiscuous behavior. And the second Bet HaMikdash was destroyed because of lack of unity and love amongst us. None of that is mentioned here. The only thing that's mentioned here is idol worship. And it's not really idol worship all the way. It's just you thought that they have some power, that they're in charge of something. Baal means in charge of. And so the Jews of that generation were saying, we realized that we were wrong, and we went to idol worship. We were barking on the wrong tree. We were asking some help from the wrong people, and now please help us, and we will go back and worship you. And God at that time would send a judge for a short period of time to fulfill that need, and then the judge will pass away, and God would expect all of us individually and each of us individually to continue to do the right thing. And we didn't. And a period of time passed by, and deja vu all over again, and we did the same thing, and God had to send another judge. That's why the government looked so fragmented, because God didn't think at the time that we need continuity in government. It's just take care of your own urges and your own needs, and I don't want to say be a man, be a person, be who you need to be. Be a mensch, exactly, thank you. Mencha. Menchet, all right. Vayishlach Hashem et Yeruval. Now, he's mentioning four significant judges. The other judges are considered less, they did less, and they really fulfilled a lesser need. And those three were the three minor ones, because the major ones are Moshe, Aaron, and Shmuel, right? And those are the three lesser ones, but they're more than others. And there were Yerubal. Yerubal is Gideon. His name was Yerubal because he was fighting with the Baal. Yeruv Baal. Yariv with the Baal. He was fighting with the Baal. What was his war with the Baal? Just to recount what happened, at that generation, they raised a big ox, like the biggest ox, the most elaborate one, to be sacrificed to the Baal of the generation, to the idol of that generation. And God came to him, sent an angel, and he appointed him to be the judge. So he went and promptly killed that ox and sacrificed him to God, I think. Anyway, but they woke up in the morning and there's no ox. So they wanted to kill him. And he said, hold on. If your God is bigger than my God, let him take care of it. What are you fighting? Let him fight. So he was mocking and laughing. So that's why he was called Yeruv Baal. He was fighting with the Baal. So he was, and again, who selected him? God sent an angel to select him and appoint him. Ve'et Bedan, that's Shimshon, right? He's from Shevet Dan, and there was a verse in the blessing of Dan Yedin Amot, that God said that He is going to send a savior to the Jews from the Shevet Dan. Now, why is He mentioning him here? Because He saved us from the Philistines, number one. Number two, the Jews not only didn't select Him, they were against Him. At one point, they wanted to turn Him in, to extradite Him to the Philistines. So, Shmuel is showing us here that all of those leaders were not selected by the Jews. Not only they were not selected by the Jews, some of them the Jews didn't even want. And the third one is Iftach also. He was thrown out of his house, was leading some sort of a group of hoodlums or militia, and was kicked out of the city. They just get out of here. And then when they saw that there is nobody else that can help, so they came, with the tail behind the legs to ask him to help them. So it's not that the Jews really selected him. It's God who led this appointments. And Shmuel too, because of all the story with Hannah. She asked, she received, from birth, he was the chosen one. And God sent all of those people to save you, and Shmuel is describing the 400 years of the judges as a safe time that we were in Israel. It was relatively safe, despite all of those incidents, all those battles and wars, and people who were bothering us and stuff. But for the most part, it was okay. Which is, if you read the book of Judges, you would be fooled. It's mentioning what makes the news is not when everything is okay. You don't write in the headlines, today was great, nothing happened. But that's what happened for most of the days. So, but the book is just mentioning the times that it was not okay. Now, one of the things that the rabbis are mentioning from here is that every generation gets the right man for the job, and that man or that person is measured up to the generation. Meaning, if the generation is at a high level, the leader is at a high level. If the generation is in the toilet, or is not such a great generation, the leaders are not that great. Okay? So go watch the news now and decide for yourself. The point is that when God selected a leader for us, relatively speaking, they were at the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. It says, Moshe bedoro ki Gideon bedoro. Moshe was as important as Gideon was important. Even though if you put them, one-on-one in Jeopardy, it's hands down Moshe Rabbeinu will win. But in that generation, they were the same. And Aaron bedoro ke Shimshon bedoro, right? Aaron is equal to Shimshon, and Shmuel bedoro ki Yiftach bedoro. Shmuel was the holiest, one of the best, the greatest prophet that we had after Moshe, but he's like Yiftach, a guy that some people say killed his daughter. It's think about it. But if God selected the leader, that's the right leader, and we were not involved in that selection. So now Shmuel is concluding. So now let's fast forward to what happened a week ago. And Vatir'u ki nachash melech bnei Amon ba'alechem. And now you got scared. And another guy came, and he didn't threaten. He wasn't as bad as Sisra and all those other guys. He just was threatening to poke the eyes of one town. And you right away, made in your pants, so to speak, and, decided that no more, we're not going to use the same system that worked well for us for all these hundreds of years, and now we want a king. But אמרו אליי, לא, כי מלך ימלוך עלינו, והשם אלוקיכם עליכם. You wanted a king, but God is your king. But we listened to you, and we gave it to you. ועתה הנה המלך אשר בחרתם, אשר שאלתם, והנה נתן השם עליכם מלך. And now, here it is. Here is the king. Can you imagine what Shaul standing there and listening to all of that? Heard that, he's not supposed to be there. He was not supposed to, it was like a mistake. And this is, by the way, the reason why Shaul changed totally at this point. Changed totally. He was the worthiest person. He was, right? God selected him too. It wasn't the people who really selected him. The people demanded him, but God selected, handpicked him. And he changed his way totally, and he became a different man from that point on, and started making mistakes, and one thing led to another, and it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, that he lost it. And the reason he lost it is because he was standing in this rebuke, in his inauguration, in his second inauguration, in the gala, right? When everybody is happy and dancing and smiling, and he's being told, listen, because of all of those things, really the Jews should not have been selecting you. It's a very, very strange and very, very difficult moment. So here it is. The king is here. So now, I think we should. The rabbi is supposed to start now. Anyway,
He's not teaching.
Oh, he's not teaching today. Okay, so let me just summarize it, and we'll go inside, because there are several psukim here that are dealing with this. He's basically telling them, if you're gonna listen from now on to God's words, and he's listing like 5 ways of worshiping God, the proper way, which we'll go through. If we're going to do all of that, we will forgive you for this time that you decided to throw the yoke of God and ask for a king and think that the king is an independent agent. God will forgive you. But if you don't, you're going to lose it. You're going to lose the king. The king is going to lose the job, and you're going to lose the king, and it's going to be terrible. Mm-hmm. And he's going to be using hocus pocus magic to show them that that's the way it should be. But we'll talk about it next time.
Right.